Hello there, I'm the Common Sense Guy. As you can see, I'm doing another video with my face. This is not going to be a common occurrence. I just wanted to point out a couple of quick little things. Most importantly, I just wanted to quickly point out the fact that we have just recently hit 200 subscribers. And that was actually just yesterday. So thank you for everybody that has been subscribing to me. Thank you very, very much for everybody that's been sharing my videos. Thank you very, very much on that one. Right. Now we've got that little bit of housekeeping out of the way, it's time for me to actually talk about what I want to talk about today. And that actually being the fact that I want to talk about the fact that yesterday I did my political test and it turned out that I was under the umbrella of liberalism, or a liberal, I believe was the actual point. So I thought, well, if I'm a liberal and I want to do some activism, then I would come under Sargon's little umbrella term of liberalist. So I thought I'd have a look at his liberalist principles and see where I would fit in. Or even if I would fit in. So, without further ado, let's actually get into this and let's have a little bit of a look. Obviously, I'm going to explain all of my points. So, liberalist principles. The statement of principles is a list of the values that liberals hold as ideals. Yeah, see, I disagree with that. Just straight off of the bat. Simply because you're trying to put a group together, or in this case, a collective that has the same ideas and same embodiment of ideas. Wouldn't it be liberalist can hold, or should hold, as in giving the autonomy of the liberalist to decide what they're actually doing? Wouldn't that be the idea of being liberalist or liberalism? As long as that you have individual rights, isn't that the whole idea of liberalism? Those are questions, they're not answers, they're not double-edged swords or anything else like that, they are questions in general. But on that little statement, it got me a little bit on that one. This statement of principles is a list of the values that liberalists hold as ideals. And it's just, I really do feel the way that Sargon writ this is a case of trying to promote a collective ideology. I'm not sure if he's actually believing in the ideology or forgetting how to write, because that states that they should hold these set of principles, which means you're creating a collective thought group, rather than saying you should, as in you could do. These are the principles that we gauge you by, but yet you don't have to abide by completely. But then again, let's see what the next sentences say and see what actually goes on. We also recognise that we live in the real world and that no sense of principles can ever be fully realised. So I suppose the other sentence that I've just tried to pull apart kind of gets negated there, but only kind of. I still feel that you should have put should or could in there, rather than does or implies that they hold these ideals, otherwise they're not liberalists. But let's just move on quickly. But prompting this world view will produce a demonstrably better society than the current alternatives. And I have to absolutely agree with that statement. I just can't disagree with it. You either got this authoritarian left that's coming through, or the totalitarian ideologies of the alt-right. It just doesn't meld well with the ideas of a liberalism, or liberalist, as Sargon would say. It doesn't meld well at all. And the fact that you've got 4 and 5 and 6 year olds being taught how to sext, how to actually, the ideas of transgenderism, rather than just being kids and learning how to grow up by themselves and relaxing and playing little games like Kiss Chase or It or whatever, they're learning about how to sext and how to transition. And it's okay to transition when they don't even understand who they are because they want to be Barney the dinosaur. Great idea to tell kids that, isn't it? But whatever, that's a completely different video at a different point. So let's move down to individual rights, shall we? So, individual rights. Protecting the rights of the individual must be the highest value of society. I agree. To foster mutual tolerance and respect towards the cultivation of the dignity of every person. Yeah, there's not much else to really say on that. If everybody's got exactly the same rights, technically you can't really go against that person without going against those person's rights. There's not much really to say on that one, is there? There really isn't. If you go against a person's rights that has the same rights as you, you're going against the ideologies of yourself. It makes no sense on that one, does it? There's no point in going through that. Individual rights I would place at the top of society, as I said before. I'll say again, I believe it's the foundation of a true and strong, stable society or civilization. So, now we got that out of the way, let's move on to democracy, shall we? Democracy is the best way for a free citizenry to maintain a state and resist tyranny. I agree, but I disagree. Now, I'll explain why I disagree. The idea of a direct democracy, which is what I presume that you are trying to state, or the democracy in how the UK is run, I presume. And obviously, as I'm presuming, I'm making an arse out of you and me. But it's only an assumption. So, with that, I would have to say that with direct democracy, or democracy in itself, you can vote for tyranny to come in if you believe in the propaganda enough and there's no resistance to the propaganda. Now, the reason why I say that is obviously because of Pol Pot, obviously because of Stalin and all the rest of Lenin and all them type of people that were voted into power, except for Lenin, who made a revolution. But you know what I mean. After that, they were all voted in. And that's the point of stupidity in the ideas of a democracy. Now, I would also state that that could have happened anywhere and could have happened at any time. It depends on the propaganda levels. At this moment in time, people are actually believing the shitstorm that is there are more than two genders, when we know for a fact that you're either male or female, and in some abnormal cases you might be intersex. But even that, you still take characteristics from one sex, and then you're that sex for the rest of your life, as long as that's what your characteristics are. And it just shows you that propaganda is a very, very strong tool and can sway the idea of democracy. Now, I'm not trying to say that I want a monarchy either, because if you have any sort of form of a single leader ideology, where dictatorship or monarchy, then all you'd have to do is change the ideas of that one person, and then the whole structure will fall down. That doesn't work for me. I would say that the idea of an American republic, as in the Electoral College and the Senate, though it's a more complicated issues and more complicated processes, I believe that that doesn't allow one person to be able to completely control what's going on, as in, i.e., the president. But also, as well, it does give the ideas of being able to move forward. And it also gives more power to the people that are in rural areas rather than in cities. I mean, if you look at the way that London voted in Brexit, if we had a form of electoral college, then that would actually have probably have decreased the percentage in people that wanted to remain. But then again, that's probably just my own personal ideology on that one, my own personal biases. I'm not 100% sure. But I agree with the statement that democracy is the best way for free citizenry. I do agree with that. But I also say that it's not the best way of resisting tyranny, because you can vote tyranny in. But that's more of a nitpick than a deconstruction. So, moving on to economic freedom. Property rights that begin with personal self-ownership and private property? Okay. Well, I'm sorry, Sargon, but on this one, I don't really mean to be a bit of a cunt to you. But why would you put personal self-ownership and then private property? Surely both continue are the product of the same thing. If you have private property, you have the autonomy of self-ownership. That correlates into itself, does it not? Same as you have personal self-ownership, which is a contradiction in itself because it's a double negative, which is fun to begin with. Then you have private property. I do agree that private property does create the most productive societies because it's something to work for, it's something to strive for. I think that your writing of this might have needed to have changed because all you needed to do with that one is put property rights that begin with private property or property rights that begin with personal ownership. Maybe it would have been better if there was just a comma in there. Maybe that's the difference. Then again, now I'm just picking about grammar rather than actually deconstructing what he's actually saying. Is that me nitpicking? Yeah, kind of. Kind of it's me nitpicking. I will agree with that. But at the same time, it's a case of these are supposed to be principles that not I myself, because I don't have to be a liberalist. Don't have to be. But if I want to be an activist, then I probably would be wise to use this umbrella term of liberalist. Because the idea of liberalism just doesn't seem to actually foster any emotion anymore. Doesn't seem to foster any fight or anything. So when I'm doing this video, I'm not actually trying to attack Sargon or anything else like that. I'm just trying to work out where I would fit into this program, this ideology. So, yeah, I do agree with that. Maybe just the wording of economic freedom should be changed. I don't know, maybe it's just my intellectual level being too low to actually understand the magnificence of the sentence. But then again, I could be wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to agree with economic freedom that, yes, it does create the most productive societies because it does give you the incentive to be able to control what you earn, what you buy, and what you own. Because if you have those things taken away from you, what's the point? So, freedom of speech. Freedom of expression is a necessary and fundamental pillar of a free society. I would have liked Sargon to go a little bit deeper on this one. I would have liked Sargon to say that we would push for a constitutional right of freedom of speech. But the fact that he's used freedom of expression, obviously because he's English, the same as I am, meaning that we don't have a freedom of speech laws or constitutional right, it's a case of we use freedom of expression, which is just a law. But I would like that integrated into a constitution or a form of constitution. Maybe that would be a good idea for Sargon to actually implement something along those lines. Obviously, later on down the line, I mean, he's literally just created it like 4 or 5 days ago. I'm sure there's a lot of ideas that are going around his head at the moment and a lot of other people doing ideas for him. But I think the creation of an actual constitution in the UK would be a really strong policy to push through if he wanted to make this a political activist or political activism. I think that would be a really good idea. But I have to agree with Sargon on that one. Sorry, my voice is a little bit weird today. I've got a little bit of a cold and a sore throat, to be honest. So if my voice goes up and down, it's just illness. So yeah, I agree that it's a fundamental pillar, but I disagree because it's not a pillar. It should be the foundation or the bedrock of a whole society. If you're going to have any sort of freedom of society or free society, you need to have freedom of expression, freedom of speech, the freedom to be able to tell people what you think, your ideas, expressing. If you don't have any of that, the rest of society will crumble. That's why I don't think it's a pillar. But I can get into the semantics of construction at a different point in time. The principle is the same. Self-reliance. I'll just move that up very, very quickly so everybody else can actually read what I'm reading. Self-reliance. People possess agency and should be treated as such because treating people like victims becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It does. It does in itself. It really, really does. The same as the fact that at this moment in time, people that are being called racist are moving to the alt-right and becoming, well, racist. To be blunt and honest. Now, that's not to say that everybody in the alt-right, obviously, is racist. Obviously, they're not. Hashtag not all. I can't believe that I just did that. Hashtag not all. Sorry, hashtag. Whatever on that one. It is obviously a prudent point. If you keep calling somebody victim, then they're going to think that they're a victim, and they're going to play on the victim card. Whether that be blacks, Hispanics, whites, whatever. If you tell somebody you're poor, you're always going to be poor, you're never going to amount to nothing, then generally either that person's got two options. Prove absolutely everybody wrong, or live up to the low expectations that people have set upon them. And generally, if you have low expectations that have been set upon you, you're going to live to those expectations. Because what's the point in trying harder if people don't believe in you? But, as he says, self-reliance. As Sargon says, self-reliance. It's a case that, yes, you do have the autonomy to be able to decide what you can and cannot do. I agree that at this moment in time, it would be, especially in some American cities, it would be hard for different people to be able to pull themselves up. But it is capable. You are capable enough to be able to do it. I'm not saying it's easy. Nothing in life is goddamn easy. But it is possible. You're not being discriminated because you're a particular colour for any particular reason. Unless you're in America and you're white, meaning that you've got to score a hell of a high point on your SATs to be able to get into college or university. And God forbid if you're Asian. But that's not discrimination. It's positive discrimination, apparently. If that's such a thing. But that's another video, that's another topic. Yeah, Sargon's right in the self-reliance point, and I agree with that point wholeheartedly, just in case I got lost in translation there. Yes, people do possess agency, and they do have the autonomy to be able to get out and do what they need to do. Everything's put in place for them to be able to do it, they just need the gumption to do it. So, blind justice. Each individual should be governed by the same laws as their peers, without arbitrary discrimination, and be presumed innocent until proven guilty by a fair trial. Well, that kind of answers itself, doesn't it? Each individual should be governed by the same laws as their peers. Of course they should be. Of course they should be. Of course! Of course! That's just the way that life should be. It's a shame that we have to write in here that it should be this way. Because it should be this way. Everybody should have the same laws. It should be exactly the same for everybody else, regardless if you're a millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire, or a pauper. It shouldn't matter. You should all abide by the same laws. Just because you have more money doesn't mean that you should be able to buy more lawyers. There shouldn't be circular loopholes that people can get through and things like that. You should all be judged by the same laws. But I don't really have too much of an issue with that one, so I'm not really going to carry on talking about it. I completely and utterly agree, and I also agree with people should not be discriminated if they've been accused of something. So basically, you should be presumed innocent until proven guilty, not guilty by association of public trial. And by public trial, I mean Twitter judges. I mean the idea of Facebook councils, the idea of YouTube tribunals. You hold no process of law. It's just an idea of going through if you think the person's guilty or not. Yes, that's your opinion, but don't say that it definitely is, especially if that person goes through court and then is proven innocent, and then you still claim that that person's guilty. That would make no sense, would it? But it still happened before. So, last one, and then I'll do a little bit of a wrap-up, so to speak. Secularism. Everybody is free to practice their religion, or not. Good point. Very, very good point. Can't really argue with that one. Last little part of the sentence. As long as it does not interfere with the rights of others. I agree with the statement, but was the statement necessary to be put in? Because obviously with the first one, you have individual rights. It sort of contradicts itself. Again, I'm nitpicking. I know I'm nitpicking. But it's just something that if he wants to write something completely proper, kind of like a policy or set of principles or a manifesto, which is kind of the reason why he wrote it, I believe. It's a case that you have to understand that language is important. And I know Sargon does. There's a reason why everybody holds him in such high esteem and in such high regard. And when he does something wrong, people point it out to him. Not because we want to prove that Sargon's an idiot or an arse or anything else like that. Because the people that we care about generally, we hold to a higher accountability. And Sargon in himself, I believe, has fitted that mould. We hold him in such a high regard and hold him to such accountability because we believe in his message. Hence why we've unofficially made him the leader of our community before he was actually ready to accept it. I'm quite happy that he's accepted it, and I think he'll be a good leader, so to speak. I don't really think that he really needs to do too much. That's a good thing about the idea of liberalist. I don't think he needs to be doing too much on the internet. As he said before, he'll just carry on doing his videos and updates and things like that. I think what's the most important thing is what he does on the real world, in real life. And I would like to offer any sort of support that I can. I know I don't really have too much, and I know I don't really do too much. But I do like the idea of actually being able to change some of these laws that are coming through and fighting against them. So I would have to say that I am completely and utterly in support and in favour of being a liberalist. And yes, I actually agree with the name. The way that he explained it absolutely makes sense. If you're an activist of feminism, you are a feminist. If you're an activist of communism, you're a communist. Excuse me. If you're an activist of socialism, you are a socialist. So if you are an activist of liberalism, you would be, as he explained already in a video, a liberalist. It does make complete and utter sense. The name is growing on me. The name is actually quite interesting to me as well. And the fact that it's not taken means that you can actually form political groups. You could actually form a political party under that name, the Liberalist Party. It works. And I think that would be something that Sargon should do. I'm not trying to say that Sargon himself should run for any particular policy or any particular political office. I'm not saying that. But I think if he really wants to start doing something, then he should start a political party called the Liberalist Party. I really do think that. Or at least patent the idea for it. Because I reckon within about a year, that's where you're going to be wanting to go anyway, is going into politics. Because otherwise, how else are you going to change policy if you don't have people that are on the inside as MPs? It would make sense, logical sense, wouldn't it? So now I'm just going to do a quick little wrap up. I'm not going to take too much more of your time. I believe I've explained all of my points. Admittedly, probably not in the best of articulate ways, but I feel I got the point across, so I'm happy to put this video up regardless. I really like the idea of forming some sort of political group. Now, I know it's in early stages, and I know that it's okay to nitpick. It's a case of, I do feel that it needs a little bit more work, but by God, it's only had 5 days, 6 days of actual life. So it probably needs a little bit more time to bed in, and the whole process probably needs a little bit more time to bed in as well. So I have to agree with not on all of the principles that were set here today. Yes, I have reservations about how some were worded and how some were put forward. But if it's just a generalized or a generalization of what liberalist would think because of liberalism or classical liberals or libertarians, then I don't really have much of an issue with this whole idea. I do hope that Sargon does go further politically. Not necessarily as himself. He doesn't need to go and run for particular places. I'm definitely not saying that, as I said in the video. But I would like him to be able to form a political party and start building that up. I know that he would need funding for that, obviously, as well, to be able to start off. But I do feel that he would gain quite a quick movement, especially with most of the people actually supporting him online as well, and supporting people like Count Dankula and supporting people in general. I believe that he would actually get quite a big rallying call around him. I do honestly think that. And it would be a point as well for people like Mr. Medicare and others going that YouTubers can't form any sort of thing in real life. I completely disagree with that. Activism is the whole point of actually doing something. After all, Hitler was a artist. Well, I say artist, I use that term loosely. But he was a message boy that then elevated himself by himself predominantly to become the Führer and take over 9/10 of Europe. So for him to say, oh, people can't change anything, or you can't do this because you're this, is an irrelevant argument. If you've got the gumption to go and do something, then go and do it. That's the whole point of what Sargon's trying to say. If you've got individual rights, you can go and do almost anything you want to do, as long as it doesn't infringe on other people's rights. And I'm going to bid you a farewell and adieu. Take care. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you very much for taking the time to like and subscribe this video and to this channel. Bye-bye for now.